everyone. My name is Itane Coleman, and the name of my presentation is To Be Black, Female, and Already Dead, Black Women, Discourses on Value and Disposability. And so just kind of an overview of what my presentation will entail. I'm going to give background on the film Tales of the Grim Sleeper, which was the essential site which inspired this research, talk about my thesis statement, discuss a few discourses on value emerging out of slavery, talk about a North Carolina case about Joanne Little, and also talk about missing white woman syndrome and how that tends to manifest in the media, as well as my conclusion. And so Tales of the Grim Sleeper provides a local mapping of serial murder in South Central LA, and it uses the voices of poor Black women and sex workers who either witnessed or were affected by these murders. So between 1985 and 2010, over 100 women ranging from the ages of 14 to 36 were killed and turned up dead in South Central LA. And Lonnie Franklin Jr., who was charged as the Grim Sleeper, he only got 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. And so in total, it was about 180 women whose bodies were found and who the LAPD ended up collecting and circulating and saying these women were missing, but they only charged him with this many counts of murder. And he actually had a lot of pictures of these women found in his home, either engaging in sexual activities with them, drug use, or taking pictures of their dead bodies. So there was overwhelming evidence showing that he committed these murders. And unfortunately, information on the serial murders and 911 calls weren't made public until 22 years later. So you literally have Black women navigating this space and not knowing that their lives are in danger and not knowing that they have this vulnerability and that the Grim Sleeper is looking for Black women to kidnap and murder. And so this is just kind of an image that illustrates this local mapping of South Central LA. This green dot right here is where Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s home was, and the red dots just kind of show in proximity where the bodies of these various women were dumped. And just to name a few, Alicia Alexander, Benita Sparks, Janisha Peters, Mary Lowe, all of these women were killed, and they were all between the ages of 14 and 36. So this just truly shows how close these bodies were dumped. And some of them were in very hyper-visible spaces. So some were in alleys, like literally you're walking down the street and there's a Black woman's body laying in an alley. So, you know, trying to reckon with that sort of moment. And some bodies were also in landfill because he was a garbage truck driver. So he had access to actually put some of the bodies that weren't found in those sort of locations. And so these are the missing 180 women that the LAPD collected and ended up putting out, even though it was 22 years later, unfortunately. And as you can see, these are Black women of all different shades, backgrounds, many of them poor Black women, single mothers, those engaging in sex work, those engaging in drug use, and their names weren't necessarily called out. Not a lot of people paid attention to the fact that they were missing. And in the bottom right-hand corner, I indicated the abbreviation NHI. Has anyone ever heard of that? No, it's good guess though. No, but it's an acronym that law enforcement it stands for No Humans Involved. So this is the type of language law enforcement was using to discuss the ways in which these Black women were being murdered. And so for me, that was really problematic because you have 180 Black women who were missing, their bodies are turning up, and law enforcement is saying this is a case where no humans are involved. So what does that imply about these Black female bodies? And so in my thesis, I define disposability as the literal using up. And when I say using up, when you think about sexual violence, Black women's bodies are often perceived as readily available, so trying to use those bodies and then throwing those bodies away, whether it's tossing them to the side after you've assaulted it or murdering it in this case. And my thesis statement is Black women's bodies are subjected to overwhelming moments of contemporary disposability, resulting in their increased representations as victims of kidnapping, sexual violence, and serial murder. And so anytime I talk about issues relating to like Black women and their experiences and the different violences that sort of situate themselves in their bodies, I like to start with the institution of slavery just because it does give that good background for understanding why is the Black female body so susceptible to violence. And so disposability has deeply racialized and sexualized origins coming out of slavery. And there's this Enlightenment notion of humanity that's rooted in whiteness and maleness, and that kind of suggests what type of people are valuable in society. And slavery essentially institutionalized this notion of humanity and created a violence of value. So you saw black bodies being used as commodities, but also suffering from the violence of value because they didn't fit into what value entailed. And the objectification of female slaves, it was essential to the sustainability of the institution. So female slaves were used, of course, to reproduce. They were used for sexual violence. They were used for forced breeding and all these different things to keep the institution going. And Joanne Little, this is a really great case, and of course it's in North Carolina, so I definitely wanted to highlight this in my research. And she bridged the gap for me because starting with slavery to understand the violence of value, I later went into the lynching epidemic and talked about that in my paper. A lot of times people like to frame lynching as an experience that's just uniquely related to the black male experience, when in fact black women were overwhelmingly lynched. Even in one report I read, it was maybe like 6,000 or so folks, both black and white. 83% of the women that report were black women who were lynched. So black women, shortly after that period, started to do a lot of anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-mass incarceration organizing, and Joanne Little's case sort of became centered in that. And she was detained in a jail where she was the only woman in the state of North Carolina. It's believed she was kept there for sexual purpose sometimes, and she was even surveillance constantly. So she'd take a shower, people are watching her, she's in her cell, she's constantly being watched. And one jailer named Clarence Algood, he actually went into her cell and tried to rape her. She retaliated by using an ice pick to essentially incapacitate and kill him. And she was charged with first-degree murder for acting in self-defense, and the state of North Carolina wanted to give her the death penalty and put her in the state's gas chamber. So for me, this was just really problematic when you're thinking about black women who were experiencing serial murder and sexual violence. What does it mean when you don't even have the right to self-defense? Like, you don't even have the right to protect your person, to protect your body. So that's something really important to sort of understand when we're having these conversations of why black women's bodies aren't seen as valuable. And missing white woman syndrome, this was something for me to sort of have a comparative lens of how the media treats white female victims versus black and brown women. And mainstream media has a tendency to privilege young white women. And Natalie Holloway, when she went missing in 2005, and Aruba is a really great example of this, there was constant around-the-clock coverage of her being missing, headlines all over the place. And when you think about the Grim Sleeper case, where there's over 180 women who were killed and went missing, versus one woman, you don't want to create a hierarchy of which case is more important, but the Grim Sleeper case didn't even make the LA Times. The local media outlets didn't even circulate the fact that these black women were turning up missing at overwhelming rates, that literally mass murder was happening in South Central LA. And even the mayor of that area, he didn't really want to speak out on it. Organizers with the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders kind of had to antagonize him to issue a statement, and as well as law enforcement to speak up about what was going on. So the missing white woman syndrome really centers white women in the public imagination as the dominant representation of victimhood. And this is just really harmful to black women who are at an increasing susceptibility to violence. And so some of my conclusions: black women are at more risk for lethal violence, and this is something I think we need to really inform in our activism or our advocacy when we're thinking about community and the ways in which we're speaking up. And there's this practice of just kind of uplifting and highlighting black men when they're killed, but we also need to realize that black women, queer women, trans women, all these different intersectional identities and bodies are susceptible to violence as well. And I think we really need to interrogate and decolonize this violence of value and this enlightenment notion that says, if you're white, if you're male, if you're able-bodied, if you're heterosexual, that's what's important, that's how you should be framing society and be framing the folks who are valuable. We need to decolonize that so we can be more inclusive of the people who don't fit into that. And also, activists possess the power to challenge dominant media representations of worthy and unworthy victims. A lot of my research showed that people in South Central LA who were activists in the community, besides the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders, really even weren't speaking up about the fact that these black women are turning up missing, they're dead, and all these different things. So I think really activists in their work should be able to advocate for all these different people and really pay mind to how black women are susceptible to violence.